The webinar is being recorded.
Awesome, thank you. Receive a link to your email box in the coming days, as will those that are not here live. We'll have this available on our website as well. Any questions you have, just punch them on the questions board of the GoToMeeting control panel, and there you go. We'll answer your questions during or after the webinar or later on. Simple as that. So today's presenter, actually, the main guy today is Ronald van Kleunen. He has more certifications than anyone I've ever seen. So welcome, Ronald. Thank you so much for joining, man.
Oh, hi, Jesse. How you doing?
Good, good. How's the hotel Wi-Fi?
Apparently still good, but I have a backup plan on my mobile phone, the personal hotspot, just in case.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for joining again, Ronald. We'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. So I'll just do a brief intro and we'll go from there. And not only does Ronald have a vast number of certifications, he's also, rumor has it that he travels so much that he has the platinum card of every airline and every hotel chain. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. As always, everybody go on Twitter, because all the latest and greatest Wi-Fi stuff is there first, and all the latest and greatest Ekahau stuff is there first as well. So just log on to Twitter, follow me. It's my first name followed by last name. It's the most horrible Twitter handle anyone has ever thought of, but that's me. At Jussi wasn't available. You who has at Jussi, give me that Twitter handle. Anyway. Also, a couple of words about our upcoming webinars. So not only are we doing this, we're actually doing this monthly. And next month, on July, we'll have Peter McKenzie kind of going through the fundamentals of packet analysis. And if you don't have the fundamentals of packet analysis at hand, please do join. I mean, if you don't know anything about packet analysis, you don't really know how to effectively troubleshoot and understand the Wi-Fi network. So very, very highly recommended webinar. Peter is the absolute one of the world's top packet analyzers, if you can say that of a person, and he's an excellent, awesome presenter. You can check out his presentations, for example, at wlpc.com. His magic of packet analysis is one of the classics. After that, on August 23rd, after I've been off for 4 weeks, oh, look forward to that. Anyways, after that, on August, we'll have Wi-Fi versus LTE-U discussion. And this is a very special webinar because we'll be joined by 2 guys from different companies. Dave Wright from Ruckus, who's one of the undisputed world experts on this whole spectrum allocation, LTE versus Wi-Fi thing, as well as my good friend Gregor Vukanchik. Not only is he an awesome guy, but he also knows a lot about this stuff, and he's given presentations about that before. So make sure you sign up for those as well. Sign up is already open on our webpage. Go to ekahau.com/training, then choose webinars, go sign up. If I don't see you on those webinars, I'll be very mad forever, whatever that's worth. Probably nothing. Anyways, then there's Cisco Live. So I don't know if anybody's going to Cisco Live. If you are, feel free to approach us on the questions or chat board, and let's hook up there. Ekahau will be there as well, many of these guys in the picture. Our booth is 2722, and yeah, come see us there for some Finnish candy, some category-breaking new products that are not announced yet, but we just might show them under the table for you, unless you're IB Wave or Air Magnet, and yeah, see you there, guys. I know I'm taking a lot of Ronald's airtime, but I'm going as fast as I can, man. So we have a blog where all of our latest stuff will come first, the product releases, technical articles, whatever. Go to ekahau.com, hit blog, punch in your email, hit sign up, and you'll get the sign up. You'll get the updates to your email, because one thing we don't have enough is email. And this is one of our blog articles that I just recently put in. So if you're coming to Cisco Live, let us know, and if you're willing to shoot a testimonial with us, Ekahau Swag Pack is yours. And this requires you to sign up in advance so that we can schedule the professional photograph or whatever. But if you're interested, let us know. Go to our blog and check out the blog posting, and you'll find out the details. Also, check out the blog posting about 10 essentials of high-performance Wi-Fi. It's a video that was recorded in Nashville, Tennessee. Also, I wrote quite recently, a few weeks ago, about the Wi-Fi capacity planning and kind of the importance of balancing between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and we kind of tried to investigate. We went and dug to the Android source code to kind of understand that better and whatever. So go read that. It's a technical article, and feel free to comment. I'm not 100% expert in, or actually I'm a 0% expert in this. Also on our blog and on our webinars page, one of the most favorite past webinars was the last one we did with Jerome Andri about optimizing your Wi-Fi network for the iPhone. Excellent webinar, very technical, but also very useful information on how your phone sees the network and how you can design a good Wi-Fi network around an iPhone. All right. I know I'm going as fast as I can, guys. Don't lose me yet. We're getting to the beef after this slide. So last slide. I'm actually making a road show around the US between June 28th and July 10th. So driving from Las Vegas to Phoenix to Dallas to Atlanta to Memphis, Tennessee to Charlotte, Raleigh, North Carolina, and to DC. Come see me in one of those cities if you want to understand like what's the really cool stuff coming out in September. We have a major product launch then, but the only way to see those products is either join us in Cisco Live, which may give you a chance, but if you join us there, it will give you a chance. So early or like advanced sign up is required, and I will not advertise this anywhere else after this webinar. So this is your last chance to kind of sign up. All right. Anything else? No. Time to let the non-marketing guys talk. So Ronald van Kleunen, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Excellent. And nothing like 2 megabit total Wi-Fi, huh?
Yeah, let's see how it performs. Okay, how do we change to presenter mode?
Allow me to try and fail.
I cannot, I think myself here. Yeah. All right.
Du bist jetzt
Is it
presenter.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Except you have too many certifications. The font is too small, man.
Yeah. I put also the time zones on the top because we have a lot of people on this webinar, so I'm not sure in what time zone you are. I think Keith is in Australia right now, so it's 2 a.m. or something like that at nighttime. So we always need to take the global community into account. But I think this is a good time for most of the people. All right. Shall we start, Jesse? Okay, I think I lost his audio. So we're going to look into...
Take it away. Take it away.
What's that?
Take it away. You're ready to go. Start.
We're ready to go. Okay, we go full speed. So welcome everybody, and of course Jesse to help with the invitation, and also the person with a very long name, Anastasia. Her name ends on Asia, so that's my region where I normally are, in Asia. Well, in the security world, we collect a lot of certifications. If you do security, it's kind of an hobby. So we're going to focus. I'm
not sure if we have your screen. Do we have your screen? Yes, we do.
Yeah, I'm seeing it on my end, you see.
Okay. Hey, Ronald,
yeah?
I'm an idiot. That's all.
No, oh, no. Don't try to hack my webinar, Jesse. Okay, so so we're going to focus on the Wi-Fi security essentials, but if you have any question, you can put it in the chat box, but typically I don't look in the chat box when I'm talking, so we leave all the questions till the end. And we can go deeper if you have a more advanced question about security. This is a synopsis. I will skip this because it was in the invite already. The agenda is we're going to do a quick introduction. We look into the Wi-Fi security risks and the way how to address them, planning for Wi-Fi security in an organization, optimizing roaming, cell positions and overlaps, and improving your career in the Wi-Fi security by following vendor-neutral professional wireless training. But I have also some demos. Now, I recorded the demos in advance because I'm very afraid that when I do the demos that I lose my wireless connection here. So I'm cheating a little bit doing the demos, but it's all recorded. So Jesse did a quick introduction already. You can reach me on Twitter at Globeron, or my email is here as well. I founded the company 14 years ago, so it's a long time, and do also other certifications like the Certified Service-Oriented Enterprise Professional, which contains also a security component called Service-Oriented Security. The CWMP business, we do it already since 2005 and set it up in the APAC market and in Europe, EMEA as well. The certifications were covered already. I also work with international organizations together, like the International Telecommunication Union, the Building Industry Consulting Services International, IEEE, some governments, military, and some MNCs who look into the training and the certification. And some personal details that are lived in 4 countries, Belgium, Netherlands, Singapore, Thailand. And like Jussi said, they call me sometimes the Flying Dutchman. Now, I actually should not have done this introduction, because if you look in the security world and I want to find out more about a person, I actually would do that using Google. Let's give him a moment here. It's coming up. I need to move some screens here. So like, I hope it is moving at your side as well. Okay, so you can, for example, type your name. You can do that with your own name as well to try to find more information about the person. So you can look at LinkedIn profiles, Twitter IDs, YouTube, and also if you look into wireless security and you want to see what are the vulnerabilities in an organization, I first of all like to do some lookups of the person working there, trying to find out relationships, how they are correlated. So you see some familiar faces like Alan Blake as well, and some other persons on the pictures. You can also do lookups to companies. Okay, so you see that over here. So I could do that also with Ekahau, but I took my own organization here. And you can find out all kind of information about a company. You can look up IP addresses, DNS names, and that would be actually my first kind of target or security approach to see from can we find vulnerabilities in an organization. You can do lookups on Google Maps and so on. So that is actually nowadays a very easy way to find information about an organization or about a person on Facebook, LinkedIn, and the social networks, and how persons are related. So there is unfortunately no anonymity anymore. Now, before we look into security, you also need to look to the Wi-Fi services. Now, the most important item for a wireless service is the service availability. That's typically why we implement those Wi-Fi networks. For public Wi-Fi or in healthcare organizations, we want to have access to those Wi-Fi services. The second item which is important is the service performance. Because if that Wi-Fi network is not fast enough, then typically people are not happy with the service, the availability or the service impact. And people cannot make use of the services and start to complain. Now the third item is the service security for this particular wireless service. So everything needs to be authenticated so that we know that the right users who make use of the service are the real users. The access points we connect to are the real access points. And also we need to look into the encryption, that we cannot eavesdrop communication, like voice communication, for example, that is all encrypted and protected. However, the service security is impacting the service performance, because now we need to encrypt and decrypt all the data packets, and also authentication will take time, and especially when we roam from one access point to another access point, we have a lot of frame exchanges and key exchanges to validate if this client is still able to connect to the other access point. So those three items are actually related to each other: availability, performance, and security. I hope it updates fast enough, but what you see also as a growing trend are the smart cities. Some countries like Singapore, they call it smart nations or a smart island, because it is not a big country. It's actually an island type of country. Some areas we call it smart towns, and in some regions we maybe need to call it smart villages. Now there is also a growing trend, because there are still a lot of areas in Africa and the Asia-Pac market where villages don't have access to ICT, to information and communication technology. And we need those people to get enabled on the internet as well. So maybe we'll get smart villages in the future. Internet of Things is also a driver in those smart cities, because we get all kind of sensors and actuators and other devices which are enabled on this internet, and sending all this information to the cloud. So that can be intelligent traffic lights, that can be heat sensors, it can be to monitor certain assets or automatic buses which going to drive throughout the city, and it all gets connected. But in most cases, in the IT industry, we look only to those IT, or those information communication technology. But we also need to look into the Sustainable Development Goals, which are also set apart by the International Telecommunication Union, because if there is poverty in the city, for example, maybe that is not a smart city. Or if people still sleeping on the streets, that is maybe also not a smart city. So we need to look into other aspects as well. Now here are listed some smart sustainable cities goals, so that are the key performance indicators defined by the ITU, looking into ICT, looking into the productivity in that city, the environmental sustainability, the physical infrastructure, quality of life, equity and social inclusion. Okay, I will not go into detail here, but Dubai is one of the cities in the Middle East which is kind of compliant with those KPIs set by the ITU, and Singapore is another city which is almost satisfying those requirements. Now the Wi-Fi keys and the risk and the way how to address them. So in an home environment, we actually need to check how many wireless devices do you have at your own home, for example. And that's not only Wi-Fi. Okay, there are many wireless communication technologies like Bluetooth, NFC communication, and you probably have some other wireless devices in your house as well, which need to be protected. But Wi-Fi is becoming quite common now. So you actually need to maybe do an exercise to put on a PowerPoint slide to see how many of those devices are in your household. Now that is okay if you live in a standalone house, but if you live in an apartment block and you have neighbors who also have a lot of those Wi-Fi devices, it can actually become quite challenging, also from a service availability and a performance perspective, that all those devices are interfering with each other. If you look to offices or neighbors or villages or towns or offices or the smart nations, and you have high density cities, we also have that challenge that all the RF and all the channels are overlapping and leaking in each other buildings. And we also have to look to the portable devices. So you can maybe sit at the beach and still there is some wireless connectivity because you bring your laptop to the beach, or you have a smartwatch, or you have another mobile device with you. And maybe there are some security risks as well, because maybe on that mobile device you have some company confidential information, and maybe someone can try to get access to that information. So we really have to look in all different type of environments, from what are the security risks to the persons, to the employees, and the organizations. Okay, trying to get my slide moving. Focus is on Wi-Fi security, but as I mentioned before, there are a lot of wireless technologies out there. So our focus is on the IEEE 802.11 standard. Maybe some of you who are on Twitter have seen that I posted that there is the 802.11 2012 standard is now available for download at the IEEE site. So that's good to keep up to date about the latest adoptions. But there is more Wi-Fi technology, so set by the Wi-Fi Alliance, Wi-Fi standards. Recently, a Wi-Fi design standard for home environments has been released. We also have to deal with Wi-Fi Direct, so that is kind of peer-to-peer communication between Wi-Fi devices and, for example, television screens. And then we have all the other technologies, Zigbee, long-term evolution, LTE, 3GPP, LoRa, long range, Bluetooth, and so on. A lot of those Internet of Things type of technology coming into the market. And we call that actually field area networks, FAN, or low-powered wide area networks, LPWAN. Now, on purpose, I skipped the 5G because that's a very hot topic, because a lot of 5G technologies will come into the market. But I think the biggest challenge is now to find the spectrum and also the auctions related to that before 5G spectrum is available and those technologies come into the market. So we're going back to the Wi-Fi focus. So we're focusing on Wi-Fi security. And we start with some case studies. So here was an issue in Australia where actually a Wi-Fi network was named mobile detonation device, and that actually grounded the plane. Because with all those kind of attacks which are finding place nowadays, those terrorist attacks, people are getting scared. So some passenger was scanning the Wi-Fi network and they saw that this SSID name. So you can find the details back on this website link at the bottom of the page, because it impacts the services, right? So that has kind of an economic impact, that people are delayed in their flights, and maybe it impacts their business if they have to be urgent at another meeting in another location. Here is another security issue. This was a research done by a university in the Netherlands, and it was about the passwords which are stored on those cable modem routers or those Wi-Fi routers the internet service providers are giving out to the households. So typically you have this kind of barcode label at the bottom, and you have a service set identifier, an SSID, which has an algorithm related to the MAC address. So you can actually find the details in this link as well. What they studied, and they figured out that that's WPA2, the Wi-Fi Protected Access Key, including the very technical terms CCNP AIS, which stands for Counter Blockchaining Message Authentication Protocol Advanced Encryption Standard, that they were able to reverse engineer what is actually that password configured on those routers. What is not mentioned in that paper is actually, let's say 95% of the households worldwide are using this type of security. So the WPA PSK, preset key, where the password is stored on the modem itself, if that password is found, of course you can access this network, so you have access to the internet or misusing that wireless network connection. But what is also possible is that you can, I always call it reverse engineer the frames, that you can actually see the content of what people are sending over that wireless network, even they are WPA2 CCNP AIS encrypted. Now that's typically what we show in classes so that people are aware of it, but I see that as a big issue, because the moment that password is known, you can basically see and eavesdrop all that secured communication. We had some discussion with the Wi-Fi lines about that, because I think what we need to do is maybe to enable WPA Enterprise on the cable modems as well. And that should not be a real big effort, because we maybe can install a mini radius server. A radius server is like a little database where you can store your passwords and usernames in that little database. And if that is installed on the router itself, then we can actually improve the security. So that is maybe some food for thought. Some other case studies. So we have drones. So think about airports. Drones are used, for example, in the Netherlands to chase away the birds at those airports, because that's a big issue. If the birds fly up once the airplane takes off and they come into the engine, yeah, then there are some cases where the airplane crashed. But in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, they do it the other way around. There are so many of those drones around the airport that they now use eagles to chase away those drones. So it's the other way around. So the birds chasing the drones, or the drones chasing the birds. There are some privacy issues because those drones have cameras to monitor environments. They can maybe be locked, or they can tracking objects or persons, and they can follow the persons while they're walking around the facility, for example. And there are even cases where the drones can fly in front of an office, and they can actually read the LED lights of a PC, and they can actually extract information of the organization. So they're not in the building, but from looking through the window, they can actually extract information. If you want to see the details about that, you can go to this YouTube link to find more about it. Now, some of the wireless intrusion prevention systems, WIPs, they can actually detect drones. Now, to be able to do that, you require actually, it is actually an access point, but we call them sensor. And that access point is actually operational in a monitoring mode. So the radio inside that access point is capturing and listening to all the Wi-Fi packets and is able to detect from, hey, there is a drone active in this environment. Now, if you can detect it, optionally, you can actually interrupt the communication as well. So we call that de-authentication, if you're familiar with those frames. If not, then you go to Peter McKenzie's webinar next time with Ekahau to learn more about all the different frames. But a de-authentication can be done to the drone. Now, if you do that, we also need to avoid that those drone crashes into someone's property or that maybe someone gets injured. Also food for thought. How is that regulated in your country, for example, and how do we monitor and maintain the security while those drones are flying around? So that can have some liabilities issues. So Wi-Fi security risks and the way to address them. Now, basically, there are three steps to secure Wi-Fi communication. So we have the wireless LAN infrastructure and security components. Thus, really, how do you set up end-to-end security in the organization? So first we have to look into the physical layer. Okay, the OSI layer 1 is difficult to control as it is unlicensed spectrum for both 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz. Because it is unlicensed spectrum, all other type of devices can operate in a 2.4 and a 5 GHz. Now, most of us know already that in 2.4 GHz we have microwave ovens, we have motion detectors, video transmitters, all interfering in 2.4. In 5 GHz, normally we don't hear much about interfering devices, but examples of those are radars, the so-called dynamic frequency selection. You need to take that into account if there is a weather radar or an airport radar active. But there are also cases that there are motion detectors active at the UNII 3-band. And then furthermore, mobile and cellular technology like LTE, long-term evolution, is coming into the picture as well. But for that you have to look again to the next Ekahau webinar where Dave Wright and Gregor Fuchakung are, I cannot pronounce the name, but presenting about LTE in the 5 GHz. So access points need to be secured. Now, access point in your organization can be standalone access points where you may or may not put security on the access point itself. So you can think about hiding the SSID. I come back to that later on. You can have an access control list on the access point. Some enterprise level access points have firewalls built in and some mini wireless intrusion prevention system. I actually don't want to call it a wireless intrusion prevention system, but they have some of those functionality to detect rogue access point, illegal access point, and mitigate those risks. And then you have access points that are managed, which are for some vendors adopted at a controller, or for some vendors adopted at the cloud and managed from a central point, so that if you have like thousands of access points in your organization, you can push the configurations and the security settings to those access points. Then we have wireless LAN controllers and switches. Some of the vendors are using those, some of the vendors don't. Here you can also configure security profiles and push it to the access points. And it is important that there is a secure communication between the access points and the wireless LAN controllers, because some of those communication finds place over the internet, and that need to be secured as well in case you have eavesdroppers sitting in the middle. Another infrastructure component is the authentication and the certificate service. So the abbreviations you see here is RADIUS, that is that kind of database where you store usernames and passwords. The abbreviation means remote authentication dial-in user service. There are other variants like Kerberos, and we have other type of databases like the lightweight directory access protocol. This is also a user database, and we have to deal with public key infrastructures, PKI, where we can actually make use of certificates to validate the authentication server where all the usernames and passwords are stored, but also to validate the client. Now, with PKI, we can actually do mutual authentication so that you as a client connect to the network and that we know from you really the real client, but also the client wants to know, connecting to that database, that it is really the real radius or the real database with usernames and passwords stored. Because there are some examples where hackers put rogue radius services on the network and they create a kind of a man-in-the-middle type of attack. In addition, you can have also network access control devices. Basically, that is to manage your laptops, where you have antivirus and anti-malware type of configurations and policies. And what you actually validate if that laptop is allowed or not allowed, or there is maybe a virus on that laptop, we can actually quarantine this device on another other network so that it doesn't impact the other corporate devices on your network. Now, in addition, because of the exponential growth of mobile device management systems, MDM and BYOD, bring your own device, these solutions can actually monitor and manage the smartphones, the tablets, and all those mobile devices which come into the organization. And that can either be company issues, so that means the devices belong to the organization, so that you can standardize on your screen size and your software and your CPU and your memory, versus the BYOD devices, which are the devices you bring from home, where you have your personal content stored on your BYOD device, and the company confidential information need to be separated from that personal information, and we do that using certain containers. Now, it are not only the wireless infrastructure components that need to be secured and looked into, it is everything else as well. So that means you need to look into the cabling, because you maybe can tap the communication of the cables, or maybe you can look into the electric pulses, and maybe you can read information out of it. You need to look into the power, the PoE, the power over Ethernet, the switches, the routers, the servers, the gateways, the firewalls, and so on, databases. Look into the software components. You really need to look end-to-end into your infrastructure and try to identify where are actually the vulnerabilities in your organization if someone connects to this network, and what kind of security vulnerabilities exist. So you need to do a threat analysis. To manage those environments, you can have wireless network management solutions, or you can have enterprise level management solutions where everything is integrated. So that includes wireless, that includes wired networks, but it also includes the servers, the storage devices, the security devices, the applications as well. So that's important for end-to-end wireless security, to understand how is actually the service flow end-to-end for those wireless services. Because if anything happens to any little component in this whole infrastructure, then it will have an impact either on the service availability, either on the service performance, or there's maybe a service security issue. So the second item is actually how do we monitor and manage those environments. Now this is more like an umbrella sitting on top of your network. So those wireless intrusion prevention systems, WIPs, and the mobile device management systems are coming into the picture. Now, to set up those security monitoring tools, we actually need to create a baseline of the wireless LAN infrastructure, and we need to know what are the trusted devices or what are the non-trusted devices. Now, if you don't know that, then we have an issue, because then it becomes very hard to manage your security end-to-end. So we need to do classification. Secondly, we need to look into the Wi-Fi security policy. So which device is allowed and what type of traffic is allowed and what is normal activity on this wireless network and what not. So once that has been set up, basically those WIPs systems, they automatically generate events and alarms, and some of those more advanced enterprise systems, they have 250 or more than 250 different type of alarms, and they typically categorize as follows. So they look into anomalous behavior, they look into exploits like DOS, denial of service attacks, and impersonation attacks, performance, congestion on your network, reconnaissance, like scanning the network, rogue activity, like extrusion of information, and that can be a rogue, an illegal access point on your network, or that can be an illegal client. They look into vulnerabilities, so suspect activity, and they look into policy compliance, if the right encryption and authentication is used on your network. Okay, so for example, if there is an access point on your network which is using WEP, wide equivalent privacy, which has been compromised for a long time, and your policy in your organization is that all the access points use WPA2, CCNP, and AIS, then it should generate an event. And then you can actually pinpoint where is this access point located in the organization and mitigate this AP. The third item, I think is very important as well, is the security personnel. So a lot of people have followed Wi-Fi security training or have done certifications, but Wi-Fi is just a small component, and I'll come back to that later on, once we start to talk about security frameworks. So skilled Wi-Fi security personnel need to understand end-to-end security, so they really need to understand all the different security domains, and I'll come back to that. There's not only Wi-Fi security, even Wi-Fi is a very big component of the job you're doing every day. It is still a small part of the security domain. Implement Wi-Fi security end-to-end with the other disciplines. Okay, so if you're the Wi-Fi guru, the Wi-Fi professional, you still need to work together with the wired network team and also with the application teams and the database teams. Like what I mentioned in item 1, what are all those different components which makes or breaks the service? So you cannot only work on your own from a Wi-Fi perspective, you really need to understand the end-to-end service flow. Preferable, a third-party professional need to be involved. So for example, if you do an implementation of a Wi-Fi network, how do you know it is secure? So if you're the consultant and you implement your own work, of course you say it is secure. But maybe it's good to engage a third-party person to do the penetration testing, because they look from a different perspective to see if really this whole infrastructure is end-to-end secured. They can look from a black box perspective. That means you don't give him any information and he will try to find the gaps in the organization. Or you can do a kind of a white box approach. That means you give some information about the brand of access point you use, of the vendor, or you give them more information about IP addresses, for example, and then he can actually do a kind of a targeted penetration test to the organization. Now, what is very important is that you're in line with the government regulations, the law, and the company policies. Right? So let's say you're doing this penetration test and you're testing if the denial of service event or alarm works in a wireless intrusion prevention system. Be careful, because maybe a neighboring organization has a system in place and gets also those alarms, and maybe they call the law enforcement, and you can get into trouble if you don't protect yourself very well. So maybe you need to have some approvals of the organization, but also from some government agencies before you do those penetration tests. You need, of course, personnel who is skilled to manage and operate the Wi-Fi infrastructure end-to-end, but also understand all those Wi-Fi security alarms. I've seen it in organizations that people looking at the events and the alarms, and they have actually no clue what it means. Now, luckily, the more advanced systems, they have very well documented explanations from once this alarm appears in the wireless intrusion prevention system, what are actually the next actions you need to take to mitigate that security issue. Wi-Fi tools and security classification. So here is an example. So in many countries, it is illegal to tap someone's wired telephone conversation. Okay, so it is only allowed by the law enforcement agencies to get a warrant and to listen to someone's telephone conversation. But what about wireless? What about the unlicensed spectrum and the Wi-Fi network communications, which are either unsecured or secured? What about reconnaissance tools? If you don't know what a reconnaissance tool is, you do it every day. it is like scanning for Wi-Fi networks to see from where are the access points I can connect to. So reconnaissance is basically scanning around, and you do that on your mobile phone and on your laptop. So scanning, probing, and visualizing it. If you use a tool like Wiggle.net, which also takes the latitude and the longitude into account, and you walk through a city, you basically can pinpoint where are all those different access points in this city and what kind of security do they use. Is that allowed or is that not allowed? In some countries it's not allowed to display that. Spectrum analysis tools, visualizing the physical layer, protocol capture and packet analysis tools, and even decrypting the packets, is that allowed? Site survey tools, performance management tools we're using in the Wi-Fi industry, wireless network management systems, wireless intrusion prevention systems, capturing all different type of frames and sending that centrally to the management systems, cloud-based wireless LAN systems with access points at customers and access points at home locations. Basically those devices which are then in your home or in your enterprise can actually listen to the Wi-Fi activity in your organization, and it is sent to the cloud. What if the cloud is not in your own country but in another country? Are there some legal issues involved? Similar for mobile device management systems, which are basically managing and even controlling your smartphone. I'm not sure if you're using a mobile device management systems or BYOD in your organization, but typically now the organization is managing your mobile device. So you have typically an employee-employer relationship, so that can sometimes be sensitive. So what kind of rules are there for in place or regulations? Security clearance. Now, I hope that on this webinar there are a lot of people doing site surveys, and you probably have seen some of those pictures on the Twitter, and I think one of those is from Jerry there in the middle with his handheld spectrum analyzer. But from a security perspective, if I see someone walking around with a hat with all kind of dongles on top of it and kind of a Wi-Fi gun or a laptop with all the kind of dongles poking around, walking through the organization, I put some question marks if that is allowed or not. And maybe people in the organization are going to question you as well. Or maybe you can have like the hacker type of approach that people don't recognize you when you're doing wireless site survey in the organization. Okay, I hope I don't go too fast or speak too fast, but we're going to look now into some frameworks. So here is a security framework. It is a popular framework which grows exponentially in the US regions, in the EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and Asia Pacific as well. International accepted standard. It is a 27001 standard information security management system, and it integrates with government policies and a lot of commercial organizations. Now what you see here, this standard exists out of 14 security domains and 114 security controls. It's very important that at the management level that they see the need and the necessity to implement security in an organization. So again, this is not only focused on the Wi-Fi portion, but Wi-Fi is a little component of this whole security framework. So management need to be involved so that management can work with all the different departments in the organization to maintain security end to end. That can be physical security, that can be access control, so like for example a door policy that people need to swipe their badge before they enter into the organization, that it is all registered and logged and how long is a person walking in the organization and so on. But I think that item A.7, human resource security, is maybe the most important one. So before persons get employed in an organization, we need to do some background checking. So we need to screen the person. So like what I was doing earlier on in Google, I just type the person's name, or I go to those social networks like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and so on, to find more about the information and to see what kind of relationships he has. During employment is also important, because during the employment the behavior can change of the person. Maybe companies are taken over, or there is an announcement that a retrenchment finds place. So maybe people start to behave differently. Maybe they copy some customer information out of the organization. So how do you maintain the security for those kind of activity? Also, when the staff is leaving the organization, do they return all the assets back to the company? All the company assets, like maybe mobile phones or laptops, but also the information stored on those devices, or maybe they make a backup on a hard disk. Do they return that information back to the organization as well? So it is quite complicated. I think another complicated one is the business continuity and disaster recovery. So let's, for example, say that your whole data center is in fire and everything is gone, and in your data center you have all your wireless LAN controllers. How do you continue your wireless services to your end users if you're, for example, an internet service provider? Okay, so this is, I can talk for days about this standard, but I think you get a feeling that there is a lot to think about to implement end-to-end security in the organization, also at the process level. Will you be 100% secure if you implement this? No, of course not. Security never ends, and you never can be 100% secure, but this is kind of a framework that helps you to strategize the security in your organization. Oh, sorry, that goes too fast. A little bit about fast, secure roaming for voice, video, and data traffic. And of course, you have high volume traffic and you have low volume traffic. If you have been through a Wi-Fi security training, for example, you maybe have heard about this, and now that new 802.11/2000 standard has been released, so you can download that and you can find more information about roaming. So we have a slow roam, which means there is basically no exchange of security keys between the laptop or the mobile device and the access point. And we go to all different type of frame exchanges to move from Wi-Fi access point number 1 to Wi-Fi access point number 2. Then there are other items. What you see here listed, like item 2, is doing pre-authentication. Basically, all the access points on the same network, they know already that a device can actually move from one access point to another access point. And then there are some other alternatives as well, like pairwise master key caching, where actually keys are stored on the access point, but that only works if you walk back. So, for example, if you are authenticated with the pairwise master key to Wi-Fi access point number 1, you have to go to all those frame exchanges, including the extensible authentication protocol, the four-way handshake, if you're familiar with those terminology, and you move to Wi-Fi access point 2, and you have to go again to all those different frames and do that four-way handshake. But Wi-Fi access point 1 actually remembered that frame exchange and remembers that pairwise master key. Similar for Wi-Fi access point 2, it remembered that key as well. Now, if that client walks back to Wi-Fi access point 1, it doesn't have to go to all those frame exchanges anymore because those keys were remembered, and that will actually help in the roaming. So we call that fast roam back, but slow roam forward. So there was one of my students in the class was joking about this. They say, Ronald, you know what you need to do? You need to put the coffee machine at the end of the organization and let all those people do one walk around throughout the whole company so that all those keys are stored on the access points. So then they have the whole day fast roam forward as well. Then we have some proprietary technology, opportunistic key caching, and Cisco has a variant called sticky key caching. We have virtual cell technology, using a single channel architecture, but the ones you should look into is item number 7, is the IEEE 802.11r standard for fast basic service set transition or fast secure roaming. But your infrastructure needs to support that and your end user devices need to support that. And then there are all kind of key exchanges to roam securely. And then we have all of the combinations with WPA PSK, where the passwords are stored on the access point, and we have WPA2 Enterprise, where we have to do authentication with a third-party database. Okay, now we're going to move into some Globeron Ekahau demos, but I'm cheating here a little bit because I recorded all those demos, so let me switch here. And I hope that everything still works here. So as mentioned earlier, we don't have actually security classification for Wi-Fi tools, And the Wi-Fi tool sometimes can be used for other purposes. So an example, if you have a knife, it actually can be used to put peanut butter on your bread, or it can be used to fill it in yourself. Okay, so in the next demos, we use the Ekahau tool as an example to do some Globeron Ekahau labs. So we started a very early concept in Wi-Fi to hide the network. It's called SSID hiding, service set identifier hiding. And here I took an example with an SSID called UC, pronounced as Juicy. And the access point propagates UC here in this case, and the access point sees the network and does a probe request back to the network to connect to the access point. So some people thought if we hide the SSID and we cannot see it, then it is very secure. So that is in a second example. So now there is no visualization of the network. So now the client actually needs to know how to connect to the network. So maybe this network was called have SSID. So he connects to this so-called hidden network. But the problem is there are still 802.11 management frames that still reveal the SSID information. For example, the probe request if the client sends the information back to the access point. And there are some other frames which reveal the SSID as well. Here is the hidden SSID visualized in Ekahau. So you need to look at the right side of the screen where you see the radio and the SSIDs. So the first one on the top is not a hidden SSID, but the second one, now indicated in blue, you see that the vendor is unknown and the AP name is unknown. Now what else we can see in this graph is here in the middle is the red color. This is actually the spectrum analysis, nothing to do with the SSID hiding, but since we have this up here, it is quite high, and this is because of the USB 3 hub connected to my system. So you see that the noise floor raises up till, what is it, minus 85 dBm. In the second demo, we're going to look again into the reconnaissance tools, and we look into a tool called Fake AP, Fake Access Point. So there are different type of Linux scripts, and here is one called fakeap.pl. That means it is a script to be used in Perl. There is a similar script available in Python as well. Then it has the .pi extension, and you can download them from the repository online. Now what actually will happen is that this tool is going to inject fake beacons, so it looks like there are all kind of access points in the air. But with these tools, the fake AP tools, it actually sends out probe requests. So that means that current laptops like Windows 10 or smartphones on Android or Apple iOS are actually not visualizing those probe requests. But if you do it on older systems, like for example use Windows NetStumbler version 3 or in Linux Kismet, you can actually see all those different fake APs. So we're not going to use a fake AP in this case, but we use another tool called the MDK3 tool. So similar, it is also a Linux script, and one of the options is to create a beacon float mode. So here you see the commands like MDK3 space B space -H space -M. Then actually it generates all those beacons randomly, with random MAC addresses as well, in the 2.4 GHz spectrum. Now with the other options, -C36 or -C40, you can actually specify another channel, and with that you can actually inject beacons into the 5 GHz spectrum. Okay, so what are the security issues? So that those client utilities will see many SSIDs, and it will fill up the buffer of these client devices, and some client devices don't work at all. And then the site survey tools will be confused as they see many random SSIDs, many random access points basically. Here we will see the MDK3 tool in action. So we imported the floor plan, and we're going to look to the current environment, and we see that here in the 2.4 GHz we have different type of access points active, and similar for the 5 GHz, in this case we have 3 SSIDs in this particular environment. Now we switch to the Linux tool. So here we start the MDK3 tool, and you see that it is randomly with different MAC addresses on different channels inserting SSIDs, service set identifiers. Okay, so you see a lot of them on channel 2, 10, 11, 14, behind basically the whole 2.4 gigahertz is having now random SSIDs getting injected. So we stopped the tool also to visualize that we can do injection in the 5 gigahertz as well. So your dongle, your adapter, which you use with the Linux tool, need to be able to do packet injection on those frequencies. So we injected packets on channel 40 as well. We selected channel 45. Okay, probably that will not be getting recognized by the different tools. And on channel 60, we sent out a few beacon frames here as well. Alright, so we put it back to 2.4 gigahertz so that it keeps sending information and filling up the buffers of the client adapters. And if you go back to the Ekahau tool, here we see now all those random MAC addresses, which are called radios, and the SSIDs getting injected in 2.4 gigahertz. And similar for the 5 gigahertz, we see those random SSIDs on channel 36 and on channel 40 as well. Also what we see on the left side is the spectrum. So we see in the 5 gigahertz and in the 2.4 gigahertz there is some activity because extra frames get injected. And you also see a very high dBm level for the access points because I'm doing this demo very close to the Ekahau tool. So here you can see that all those different access points, which I'm indicating now in blue on the right side, get indicated in blue on the middle graph as well. Here I'm opening up the Windows view, and you see that in Windows everything is empty. So apparently my other adapter in Windows is unable to visualize all those random SSIDs. So basically the driver is now confused, and you can actually not see your other access points. So to go back to the Ekahau tool, to the site survey mode, we can do a continuous site survey. Okay, so let's assume that someone is using that MDK3 tool, one of those hackers, and starting to inject all those random SSIDs in an organization. And you're the site surveyor walking around, like what we're doing right now, doing all your captures to understand from how does the current environment look like a reconnaissance site survey, or to figuring out what kind of active access points are around that facility. Then you maybe get confused because now you're capturing all this information, and you will see in a minute that it looks like there are all kind of other access points active on other channels, but they actually don't exist because the wrong guy was inserting those SSIDs into the network. Okay, so you just have to wait for a while until we go to the other button. Like here we see a lot of other SSIDs generated at that location, and it can be very confusing for a planning tool if you want to start to optimize the channels for access points you want to install in that facility. Okay, so with that I hope I've shown you with the MDK3 tool that it actually can confuse this type of tools as well. In the third demo, we also need to look into the radio frequency jamming, the RF jamming, and that needs to be detected because it can be done intentionally with RF jammers or unintentionally. So that can be devices which also make use of the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz frequencies. Here is the visualization of the spectrum in both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. And I turn on my RF jammer, and where you see that if you focus on the 5 gigahertz first, that this RF jammer I'm using is actually jumping between different channels. So you see it actually moved from channel 52 to 56, and now it slowly moves to channel 60 here. So this is actually kind of RF signal generation, and now it jumps to channel 36. The same you can do in the 2.4 gigahertz. This was not the same type of RF jammer I used. This was a video transmitter. This was configured for channel 14, and it generates a lot of energy on this particular channel. But you can imagine if you move this kind of interference into one of those channels here, between 1 and 11 or 1 and 13, that it has an impact on the communication of the clients using Wi-Fi networks. Because the way how Wi-Fi works, it first listens before it talks. So it actually listens to the energy levels, and if the energy level is very high, it thinks that someone else is talking. So that means the Wi-Fi devices will be quiet and not transmitting any information. The third demo is looking into the wireless intrusion prevention system sensor planning. So the WIPS, that can actually be a system that communicates with access points which have integrated sensors. Now what does that mean? Basically the radio in that access point is put into a kind of a monitoring mode, collecting information and sending that information to a centralized management server. Now some of the other solutions, they have dedicated sensors, so they don't act as an access point, but they only collect the information on the 2.4 GHz and the 5 GHz frequencies. Now you have WIDS, so wireless intrusion detection systems, and they only do the detection only, and they're forwarding the Wi-Fi frame information only to the web server to do a centralized correlation. So they can actually detect also clients which are very far away from the corporate network, maybe at a received single strength indicator of -90 dBm, and can report that to the WIPS system, and they can still generate an alarm. Now if you want to terminate devices, then the sensor or that access point with the sensor radio need to be able to hear both the access point and the client at a received single strength indicator of -70 dBm to be able to do the Wi-Fi de-authentication. Well, actually those values can vary a little bit, but that is typically the range which most vendors are using. So you can do de-authentication in both directions, and note that different WIPS systems have different type of methodologies to do the de-authentication. And then we need to look into the planning aspects. Here we're going to look how in Ekahau the wireless intrusion prevention system sensor planning is done. So I'll start the video over here. So we imported a floor plan already, and you don't see any access points on this floor plan. So we select here the requirements for WIDS and WIPS, and we indicate the single strength at -70 dBm, which is required to be able to do air termination in both directions. So the sensor should be able to terminate the client and the access point, or actually inject the authentication frames. We actually indicate here also the density of the network. So we expect that there are 5011 AC smartphones, 5011 AC laptops, and 5011N laptops in this particular environment. However, this building is split over 3 different floors, so the client distribution is actually split over the 3 floors. We also actually indicate here the radio type, so in this case an 11N AC dual radio, and then we have the 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz transmit power settings. But actually for a sensor, we don't need to look in all those different details, but the sensor needs to be able to transmit and inject frames at a certain transmit power level as well. Now what we see here that all the access points or the so-called sensors have been deployed, but there is a gray area. You look at the mouse pointer and see in that gray area we have a single strength which is above the -70 dBm. So that means that actually the sensors can actually not terminate devices which are located in that gray area. So if there is a rogue client or a rogue access point installed in that area, the sensors cannot terminate those type of wireless activity. To be able to detect it is still possible, because we then have to deal with RSSI levels of -90 dBm as explained before. Now if you look from a wireless intrusion prevention system planning perspective, this scenario here looks like an overlay solution. Okay, so the customer can have already access point, have it installed in the network, and then you create kind of sensors on top of this network. So that's one type of solution, but of course that requires extra cabling, extra installation cost. So you see a lot of other Wi-Fi vendors, they have actually the sensors integrated into the access points. So maybe like a dual radio access point, where one radio is used for the Wi-Fi connectivity, and the other radio is kind of a dual band type of radio, a band unlocked radio, supporting both 2.4 and 5 GHz to scan the Wi-Fi frequencies. Or maybe you can have a tri-radio access point with one radio on 2.4 GHz, one on 5 GHz, and the third radio will be used for sensing purposes to capture, send information to the centralized web server, and also do air mitigation techniques to keep rogue clients and rogue access points off the network, but also detect protocol anomalous behavior and other kind of security threats to the network. Now, if you want to improve your career in Wi-Fi security, you can do that by following vendor-neutral professional wireless training. But what I expect of a technical Wi-Fi security expert is that he needs to be able to understand security end-to-end. He also needs to have hands-on experience. For example, doing security configurations for the wireless LAN infrastructure, or doing penetration testing. But it's quite hard to master all, and also to have access to those enterprise wireless intrusion prevention systems, and also to understand all those different wireless security issues that exist. Vendor-neutral Wi-Fi security training, Globeron, SANS, CWSP, preferable with an instructor who knows security end-to-end and who can show Wi-Fi security vulnerabilities with enterprise-level Wi-Fi tools to manage it, to monitor it, and also can make use of Linux tools, for example, to do the penetration testing, and who knows how to handle a wireless intrusion prevention system. You can also read some Wi-Fi security books and also do some labs so that you get some hands-on experience and understand wireless LAN security and penetration testing. But don't become a black hat, become a white cap. Stay on the right side. So we still have one more. Okay, so I take it back also because of time. There is actually one more lab, and that is actually kind of, give me 1 moment here. There's kind of, we call it steganography, where we actually hide messages. So I just fast forward, and you will get access to this complete demo. But you can actually also use this tool to maybe do some graffiti and actually create some hidden messages in it. And I actually did that here. If you can look very carefully, you see here JUSSI, which stands for Jussi. But if you use the planning tool, then you can actually hide. Now we actually know that Jussi is behind this site survey. We can actually then start to communicate with other persons. So that is also another way of kind of using the tool. So let me skip through all those demos over here. And so after this steganography, actually, that was actually the end of the webinar. I actually hope that you enjoyed the content and that you also enjoyed the demos. That also the tool sometimes can be used from a security perspective. Is Jerry or Nick, are you still on the line? Because we maybe have some time to take some questions.
Yes, this is Jerry. Yeah, we did have a couple of good questions here, and yeah, it's a good point. And hopefully, mentioned that there is the question box. If you haven't located that yet in your GoToWebinar, go ahead and locate that. And if there's any questions that you thought of throughout the session, feel free to go ahead and put those in now. But yeah, the first question that I flagged here by Daniel is actually more of a philosophical question, so I don't know if you're ready for that, but on guest wireless specifically, and this is a good question, good thinking question, I guess. So his question is it better to use an open network rather than a PSK for guest access? And the kind of framing of that is, my opinion is that there should be no illusions of privacy and security for users, and that it being open should hint or compel a user to use a VPN.
Right. Yeah, so you really should follow Peter's webinar next time, because he probably will go into the details of the frames. If you have done an analysis professional training or looked into the protocols, open system authentication means that the management frames, the control frames, and the data frames are all there in clear text. So if you set up a guest network, what you can do from a security perspective, because your clients are probing for the network, so let's assume it is a coffee shop, for example, a very famous one which starts with an S in the US or worldwide. And I have an access point, and I gave that access point the same name with the same SSID, then actually I can divert clients to this other access point. That could be an issue, because not only from a wireless perspective, but I'm doing a kind of a man-in-the-middle attack. That means with this access point, I have a backhaul back to the internet. So you as an end user go via my rogue access point to your services. And let's say that the service you use on the internet is in bank, and I start to inject some JavaScripts to you because you're using your web browser to connect to the internet and you don't notice anything at all. But I do a JavaScript injection, and on your browser, suddenly this pop-up window is there from, hey, there is a new version of Adobe Flash, and what do you normally do? You install that. But that Adobe Flash attack, that is illegal software. The moment you press OK, you start to install rogue software on your client. So at that moment, I actually have administrative control of your end user device without you even knowing it, because you do your normal work and you browse on the internet. So there are some risks if you use open system authentication at all. So in that way, preset key, PSK, is more secure than that open system authentication. If you use VPN on top of that, okay, so that is back to your organization. Of course, you encrypt from your laptop till the VPN endpoint in your organization all the data. So yeah, I would be a little bit careful what type of services you use, and make sure that you're really connected to the real access point. Unfortunately, I don't think there are good tools on the market to be able to identify from the access point you connect to is like an access point belonging to the organization. Yeah, and especially on public Wi-Fi networks, it is even harder to segregate. So yes, the more security layers you use, so in this case, VPN, virtual private network, which you do at the IP layer, that's a good security measure. And of course, VPN technology at layer 7, at the application layer, using SSL, secure socket layer. That means in your web browser you see HTTPS, the S for security. That will also help to secure your communication. However, there are also some attacks known that the certificates get spoofed, and then people just accept it on their mobile phone because they have no clue what that certificate means. So yeah, be careful if you use public access points, is the message. And back to you, Jerry. I hope that answers the question.
It's super. This is Nick here. So I'll follow up with the next question, and this one came from Howard, and his question was: WIPS has got a bad name, in the recent past, what with the FCC versus Marriott hotels. How useful do you think WIPS is, especially in dense environments where you have buildings close together, different businesses, with WIPS attacking each other? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I have worked for the same company as Howard is working for in the past. So I was a sales manager or business development manager for wireless intrusion prevention systems. I'm aware of that case with the hotel chain. There was a fine of $650,000 US, and also a US state had a similar case of $750,000 US. Now the thing is, that depends also on the government regulations, how the wireless intrusion prevention system is configured. So before you can prevent the system, you need to be able to detect it first, right? So maybe you should not enable the automatic mitigation techniques. So what happened probably in the hotel chain case, because the hotel wants to make more money, because end users were not using the hotel's Wi-Fi network, but were using their mobile phone to connect to the wireless network, the organization was actually terminating or actually de-authenticating the clients of those personal hotspots, and someone was using a protocol analyzer, was able to see that. So I think the wireless intrusion preventions are real useful, first from a detection perspective, so that you know if there is, for example, a denial of service attack, or someone is using a jammer in your organization, or if there are rogue access points installed in your network, to at least to get that event and to get that alarm, and that you really know at which floor or which location is this device installed. Especially if you have a very large organization with thousands of access points throughout the whole country, how are you going to manage that? You don't have continuously people walking around to do that scanning. So maybe that automatic mitigation and termination is maybe not a good idea. But if you have that alarm, then manually are going to investigate that issue. Yeah, I think there's still a use case for wireless intrusion preventions. Depends also a little bit on the vertical market. If it is, for example, retail, then those systems can also do, for example, PCI DSS, that stands for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, where actually people swipe their credit card through a point of sales terminal in a retailer environment. And typically those point of sales terminals in the US are connected via Wi-Fi. And how do you actually monitor that if those devices are not following the security policies in that organization? And then you can see if you're compliant or not. And if you're not compliant, then you have the risk that the credit card organizations are giving a huge penalty to you as well. And actually that case I just described, that is actually one of the first reasons why wireless intrusion prevention systems were developed. I hope that it depends a bit on the perspective and the vertical industry. I hope that answered the question.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent. Actually, to kind of tack onto that from a standards basis, Howard actually had another good question on Internet of Things specifically. So is there anything that you've seen from a standards process that's changing when it comes to Internet of Things? His specific kind of example was going away from just using the traditional maybe WPA authentication for these IoT devices. Is there any change happening in that space that you're aware of?
Yeah, good. I like the question because I'm also very interested in smart cities and Internet of Things and all those devices getting enabled. And I've also been recently to some discussions with the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, but also the GSMA group. IoT, you actually need to divide it into two groups. So you have IoT devices which are, well, more groups. You have IoT devices which are connected via the wired network, but I think in most cases the IoT devices will be connected wirelessly, and there you need to divide those devices as well. For example, IoT devices connected to a mobile and a cellular network, so that means you make use of the licensed spectrum like LTE, 5G, and so on. And then we have also the IoT devices which are connected over unlicensed spectrum, and examples of those are Wi-Fi, of course, but also LoRa, long range, and I think there is an exponential growth as well, because low battery operated IoT devices can communicate over a longer distance. But yeah, since we're focusing here on Wi-Fi, there are some vendors which enable those WPA PSK, preset key technologies, and they actually call it PPSK, which stands for private preset key or personal preset key. But still, kind of the vulnerability still exists. The only difference is that the password is different for every device, every IoT device. So in case the password is known for a device, it doesn't mean that all the other devices' password is known. So that is kind of an additional security measure. The other issues I see with IoT, not only security related, is more the service availability issues. If you're going to do this on the unlicensed spectrum, because you get tons of devices like your household appliances getting connected over Wi-Fi, your door locks getting connected over Wi-Fi. I'm living in a high-density city in Asia, and I see how many devices around my environment, and it is a little bit challenging already to provide good Wi-Fi service availability. So there will be one day I probably cannot connect into my own house if I'm going to use a Wi-Fi door lock as an IoT device. So yeah, it is growing. It is growing rapidly. And maybe we need to look into other spectrum and other type of technologies for the IoT devices. Maybe LoRa. I've seen a very good presentation about that, and I think that has some great potential for the longer term as well. I hope that answers Howard's question.
Excellent. Yeah. The only other, given the time here, the only other question I wanted to squeeze in here was this was the most popular question, by the way, was is the slide deck going to be made available?
Yeah. Now, before I go to that, I just want to add one more thing regarding those IoT devices. I just realized IoT devices, it depends. They also have limitations on the security. So there's maybe limited memory and maybe limited CPU available, so that it sometimes becomes more difficult if they're embedded in devices to add on those additional security. So just to complete that question. Regarding the slides, now what I've done, I like this webinar is all recorded. So that gets all available. I also pre-recorded this whole webinar that is also available on YouTube. So maybe Jerry and Nick and Juicy can put that link also on the website so that people can see all the labs again. And the slides we make it available as well in PDF format. I hope that that helps everyone. And then if you have any more questions after this webinar, of course, you can contact Jerry or Nick because they have been Wi-Fi security trained and they are CWNE as well. But you can always contact me as well if you have more questions about security. And Juicy, of course.
Although I have no certifications whatsoever, so don't contact me regarding anything. Thank you.
We just call your SSID Juicy, or you do.
Exactly. Hey, thank you so much, Ronald. Really, really appreciate this very good information, and you know, you just know this stuff inside and out. There's no denying. So thanks so much for joining. Thank you everybody for joining, and do make sure you go sign up for our next webinars. You know, there's awesome stuff lined up, and go read our blog and do everything on the Ekahau website so we get those precious hits so that our marketing department and me make our quarterly quota. No, I'm kidding. It's not based on that. It's only based on the money we make. No, I'm kidding. Anyways, enough of that. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks, Nick and Jerry, for hanging on. I guess, yeah, that's it. So see you in a month or so. Cheers, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Ronald.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Bye.